You know, it's funny when you said rallying calls. Instantly, I thought, okay, there's this like magical creature out in the world that you have to defeat. But then when you get in their aura of like, you know, their radial aura, they like, it's almost like they, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not fear, but you know, they basically like turn you against the other players because of their magic abilities. So you end up fighting each other because of this creature's magic that they cast.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would be
I don't
cool.
know.
I could see that happening, though. Like a creature casts a spell on you where you can't tell if it's the ads that you're supposed to be killing or they're actually
Or
your
it's just another
players
player.
because it just makes
Yeah,
them
that's
look
what.
like the ads or something, so you have
Yeah.
to manage it. So, yeah, PvP is something that I don't think they should limit to just PvP. Like, they can inject PvP into PvE, but that's even better.
Totally.
So, I thought that was a good idea. Now, moving on to the other topic of PvP, which is MOBA, and we keep hearing, yeah, it's people are like confused about how combat's going to work, how roles are going to work without the Holy Trinity, and every time somebody's like, it's going to be more like a MOBA, they're like, exactly, which leads me to believe that maybe even the combat style is going to be like a MOBA with a lot of skill shots. Targeting, but limited targeting. Like you select a target, that's who you're going to attack. But a lot of your skills do different things, and a lot of them are AOE's, but a lot of them are skill shots, which is important to me because I think skill shots are the best. They're the most fun to use in MOBAs, and they take skills, thus the name skill shot. And I think that the combat systems will be heavy in those sort of feelings and stuff. And additionally, I think still even now, after we've talked about it for months, people are still confused about what's the point of having a tank if I'm not a tank in a traditional Holy Trinity aggro sense. Well, it's because
Hmm.
you don't have to have a threat meter. The way you protect your fellow players is through your utilities of stuns, because they can't attack your friend if he's
Yeah.
stunned, or actual physical walls, because he can't attack your friend if there's a wall in the way. Stuff like that. Or,
Right.
and then the same way with the heals. How am I going to it's not a healer, it's a supporter, first of all. That's the biggest difference, is you're not going to be a
Yeah.
dedicated healer, you're going to be a support class. But how am I going to support my class if I can't heal them to full and keep them at full health all the time? Well, you let them run faster so they can get away. You do have limited heals. You make them attack harder, stuff like that. So it sounds like a buff thing, but it has to be done right.
Right, and then also too, I mean, again, this is, we're kind of speculating a little bit here
Mm,
that of how it's going to work, you know. But
right,
I think what could be cool though is the fact that you don't just have to run into a fight and stand there.
right.
I
And
mean, that's the ultimate, the not the goal per se, but the benefit of um, you know, traditional Trinity combat is that you don't run to one spot and stand there unless
right.
there's like traps you have to avoid. It's you're running because literally you cannot stay in target of the enemy for so long or you'll die.
Right, and I think and we touched on this last episode, is about this is all dependent on how smart the AI is and how they design the actual combat on behalf of the enemies, is because it
Right.
could just end up being like Guild Wars 2, where it's just you have all this ability to move around, but it's still just a Zerg because the enemies aren't designed with this new system in mind. They're designed exactly like you're playing through the old system, so it just doesn't work, and you just end up just pelting it, and you don't even you bother dodging every once in a while, but it's not so much that it actually really changes the game that much. And I think it's going to be a big, huge thing. And like even it's hard to really think of a system that will work whenever there's 50 people fighting the same mob. So
Mm.
they're going to have to figure out ways. I think they should shy away from it. I mean, there should be limited areas, like you fight a big dragon, then maybe a whole bunch of people show up. But like for the most part, I think it should be like fighting against. You take your team of 5, and then you get into a really hard scenario or something, and it should be like you fighting against 5 NPCs that are they're like a MOBA or something. Like they should try to mimic PvP situations in PvE situations as closely as possible for this to work, if they're going with the MOBA system, because that's what it lends
Mm.
itself to. The difference between a MOBA and then an MMORPG using MOBA combat is that there's a bunch of people. Like, would League of Legends really work if it was 20 on 20? Probably not.
No, probably not.
So there's just that.
It works because there's a set, like, playing field, but variation within that playing field.
Right. Yeah, I mean and that's the beauty of it. And so it's a question of, even if they mimic MOBA combat to a T, are they going to be able to extrapolate it in a way that having 100 people on doing this sort of system, is it going to work? And the answer is no if they do it exactly. So they're going to have to make a lot of, they're going to have to
Tweaks,
think
yeah.
about it. Yeah, they're going to have to think about it a lot to make it work perfectly. And like a 5-on-5 situation is going to be perfect. It's going to be dream come true because it's going to be like League of Legends in third person with good graphics. But if they, once you put a bunch of more people in it, which is the whole point of a massively multiplayer game, then it's a whole different thing. And so we can't just say, okay, well, they're just copying League of Legends, because it's way more than that. They're going to have to do a lot more work to make this work in an MMO environment. But I do think it's a much better path to take than just simply going, okay, it's an MMO, we need to do MMO stuff. You know, I think a MOBA it's a new genre, relatively new. It's not new, but it's newly huge. You know, it's not like there's Dota, but now there's League of Legends, which is like 15 million people playing and stuff.
I mean, it's 2013. We're on the third generation EverQuest. It's time to change things up.
Right, and it's hard to say, well, why don't you just make it like Skyrim, where it's a legit first-person combat experience, and there's no targeting really. You just swing your sword, and whatever it hits, etc. But I think it's hard to really do that with latency involved. I mean, I say that, but even I've been preaching that the 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 technology has been around for 5 or 6 years, where you can put 1,000 people on a screen with really good graphics and not have any latency, a la Planet Side 2 is a perfect example, and it's the same company. So obviously, stuff like that is possible, but I just don't know how a first-person like free system could work in an MMO. Whereas I think a MOBA is somewhere in between the two, and I think it might actually be perfect if they can actually pull it off and take into consideration that there are going to be 100 people instead of 5 or whatever. Which actually leads me to the side topic of if you were to go into, if they were to add arenas and instance PvP where it's a set environment,
Hmm.
would you want to see a MOBA map where it's a 3-lane system with towers and a nexus or whatever? Would that be cool, or would it be lame?
I mean, it would be cool in the sense for, the MOBA people, MOBA fans.
Right,
Um,
but as you, well, you're partially a MOBA fan. You play League of Legends. We played it quite a bit, so obviously you like it. As a fan of both the MMO and the MOBA, would you enjoy? First of all, would you enjoy the idea of it? Second of all, do you think it could work? Like, would it function as an enjoyable experience in reality?
it's a difficult question because I'm trying to think of other MMOs we've played and, instance type uh, PvP, and usually it's awful. Uh,
Yeah,
because and the reason is because people don't follow what you say, but then I think, well, that's not any different in any game. I mean, every
right.
game has that problem. It's just like, what kind of combat is the least dependent on what the other people do in order to achieve the end goal.
Well, I think the biggest pitfall of an MMO is MMO PvP is usually crowd control, because if how do you win? You stun somebody for like 15 straight seconds and kill them. That's pretty much how it goes in like every game. Like in Star Wars: The Old Republic, it was the same. If you got caught by the right classes, they could stun you and keep you stunned until your health was at 0, no matter what you did.
Yeah,
And
Blood Ball was great until everyone was stunned for the entire map.
Yeah, and it's like, well, how do you combat that? Well, you organize a team to stun the guy that's stunning you, or you stun them first, or you protect the healer. Basically, is the whole point, which requires you have a healer, which only happens in like actual arenas where you are practicing on this and stuff like that. So I think Guild Wars 2 was a lot better in terms of PvP. I don't think you actually did any.
I don't. Yeah, I didn't really do a lot of
It was a
PvP.
little bit better because there was and in actual organized like league PvP, it's not. It's the same. If you're this class, you build it this way because that's the best way. But in pubs, it was a little bit more diverse. You didn't always run into the same class and the same build every time. And yes, you were stunned a lot, but it wasn't just because you were stunned for a really long time. It didn't necessarily mean that you were dead. And to that extent, it was better. But at the same time, I think the combat of an MMO in general doesn't lend itself extremely well to person versus person combat. I think there's just too many holes in it for that. I think it works perfectly for what they built the AI for, but in terms of whenever you put a person in that system where they're going against another human, I just don't think it's built for that. But obviously it's the same thing every single MMO, so you just accept the faults of the PvP system or whatever.
Well, one of the things that's going to make the game interesting is that how are they going to deal with the fact that when you're playing the game, you're getting gear, gear in a MOBA. There's usually set gear, and everyone is able to get that gear as long as they earn enough money during the course of the match.
Right.
And how's that going to work when you have to craft or, you know,
Well, that's the thing though, is like that's the reason I think it would be awesome. And I think a lot of people, whenever you say, what about MOBA, whenever you say, what about a MOBA map, quote unquote map, in an MMO environment where you have 3 lanes and towers and different things you need to blow up in order, etc. And then of course you have a meta set up where somebody says, okay, this is the best way to defend this map. You have 2 here, and 1 here, and you go by that, and then but that's what people see. They see the layout of the land. But what if they actually use the gear system from like League of Legends or Dota 2 in it, where the gear you're wearing doesn't matter. It disappears once you get into the PvP match, and you have to buy the gear with the money you earn, just like a League of Legends. And the and maybe it does manifest on you. So if you have that chest piece that gives you life steal, you actually have the chest piece on, which would be cool, but not necessarily mandatory for them to design it in. But you at least get the stats, and people can see what items you buy whenever they get close enough or whatever. And it's basically the only difference is you're in a third person, and it's probably going to be a little bit different in terms of the combat mechanics, but that's the only difference. The rest of the game mechanics, where you buy the items as you play, etc. You can build your guy a little bit different if you want to hit harder or be a little bit tankier, etc., 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 etc.
so like maybe something a little closer to Smite than League of
Smite,
Legends?
exactly. Yeah. I mean, because Smite is a third-person MOBA. It's exactly like League of Legends, except it's in third person, which it really does change it a lot because you have to look and aim everything. Like you have to auto
Someone
attack
can
and
sneak
aim.
up behind you.
Yeah, and that too, definitely. The field of view changes completely, but also like whenever you're auto attacking, you have to aim your auto attacks. You can't just be like, okay, click on this guy and then get close enough to auto attack. That's pretty much a League of Legends. But if in this game you're aiming every single time, and I think that changes it altogether. And I love Smite. I think Smite is boss as hell. So I mean, there's definitely a possibility to make it really good. The problem I think a lot of people have with it is they think, okay, this is going to be a sandbox, but by having anything instance, basically dungeons or PvP, you're taking away from the sandbox experience. And I think it's true to a point. I think by having all the PvPers know that they can PvP by clicking on a button and waiting for a queue to pop, You're taking away from the idea of this dynamic world and the PvP happening naturally and for reasons, not just because you click the
Hmm.
Q button, but because that bitch fronted and he's got to die. So you get your posse together, you roll in on him and you kill him. And I think that definitely declines if everybody that's mad enough to kill people is killing each other in the arena. So I think there is an argument to be made. I'm just not sure if the argument is good enough to not put it in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, but if you don't have factions, how are you going to have world PvP? You know,
But I mean, we didn't have
uh,
factions in Shadowbane, and we still fought all the time because that was the entire game. I don't think factions matter really. I don't. I think they're
there
good
were
for creating.
factions in Shadowbane in the sense that
Well, the
you could
guilds,
control land. Yeah.
but that was player factions though, and it's the same thing. Hating that guy over there enough to kill him is just a microcosm of a guild on guild battle.
Hmm.
I'm me and that guy's him, and we're fighting because we hate each other. Whereas if you just add 5 people to either side, you have a guild on guild battle. It's the same thing, really.
Hmm.
I mean, and once you put it in the hands of the players, then that it's not about, okay, I picked Horde when I'm character creation. Now it's okay. We don't like that person because they talk shit in chat, or we don't like that person because they mine the mines that we want to control, or whatever the case is.
Hmm.
And I think that's where it gets awesome. And I do think that by adding these instance areas where everybody's disappeared when they feel like PvPing, it sort of does take away from that a little bit. But I'm not sure it's a good enough reason to just remove such a staple, Because I think
I mean,
people that play are going to be. You have to remember that even though this is an MMO that's changing everything, people who are playing are still MMO players. And some of them just want to queue up for PvP and do that for the hour they have.
well, I mean, just imagine a world where you can do whatever you want. There's going to be, instances of people getting together and fighting.
Right.
So I don't necessarily see it as being a break from what they're
Right,
doing
and
as far
what
as
you're trying to say is that you could do anything, so there's bound to be some people fighting at somewhere in the world.
and
So
people
let's
are going to want to RP fighting. People are going to want to RP. I mean,
and if you build
it'd
the
be
game
like
well
everyone doing
enough,
martial arts. It's a pastime. It could just be a pastime,
right? And
like Hudball.
if they build the game well enough, people are going to have reasons to kill each other past just not liking each other. They're going to be able to fight over resources or whatever the case is. If the game is done well enough in the way that we all hope it's done, then there's no reason why PvP shouldn't be abundant. I just don't
I
know
guess.
if people are going to accept the fact that it's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only real concern would be like the thing about instances, you can control the layout of the land, you can control the
Yeah,
numbers on
there's
each
definitely not
side,
going to be any like
so it's more
league. Yeah,
balanced.
there's not going to be any league play because once you get into open world, balance is out the
You throw
window.
that out the door
Yeah. So I mean, I
or
guess
window.
well, whatever, the porthole, but I guess it's there's good. I think there's a good argument for both sides, but it's just a matter of what they think. It doesn't matter what we think. So I think more people are going to say they want it than people who are going to say
Yeah.
we don't want it because we think this philosophical reason that we just gave.
The more things you have to do, the longer people will play the game.
Right. I mean, and also you look at Reddit and stuff, and it's gotten a lot better over the weeks since the debut. But at first, it was all about why is this game so different? I don't like it. Now it's more about talking about the game you're being presented. But at the
Hmm.
same time, there's still posts about, well, they should just do this instead of doing something new, etc. So I think a lot of people are still gonna, and a lot of people aren't even in the conversation. Like this small sample size of people talking about the game, it's really small. Like I'm surprised at how few people are actually obsessing over EverQuest Next, all things considered. So I
Well,
mean,
it's
there's
probably
still
just because they only recently announced this new direction for the game. I mean, they haven't been. This isn't like something we've been able to follow for the last few years. This is like new.
right, and man, the point is like maybe what like 100,000 people were maybe you know. But there's if you get to say your gameplay, you've got 2 million people actively playing your game. That's 1.9 million people that weren't discussing anything before your game was launched, and that's 1.9 million people who are expecting you to have instance PvP because it was in the last MMO that they played, and they don't really realize that this game is completely different. So it's like a balance, I guess. Do you say, F you, we're going to make a really badass game despite any of the things that you're expecting, instance PvP, because we think that instance PvP takes away from the sandbox? Or are they going to say, well, instance PvP is one of the things that we could do and do well, It doesn't have to be shitty. It could be really good. And we're going to add it in there because people expect it. Because I think that they're going to have expected stuff in there. It's not like just because they're changing like the core mechanics that they're just not going to have other things. A lot of the stuff that we expect is going to be in there. 90% of the stuff that we expect from an MMO is going to be there. It's just not those things that we're tired of doing necessarily, I guess. So
I mean,
we'll
I
see.
guess it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It just has to be perfect. I mean, if you look at SOTOR, the planet of Ilum, where you had like massive, it was like a wasn't really open world. Well, it was the closest thing they had to open world PvP,
It was a PvP
and
zone.
right, a PvP zone. And what happened was, I guess, there was tons of lag. It wasn't balanced properly, and then they just shut it down, and you lost that entirely in the game. And I guess my thought would be, if they do decide to do something like that, or just any feature, they really need to spend the time to get it done right, or else it's not going to be any good. I mean, it's not going to be any good. And what I mean by that is, people are going to see the fact that, oh, they're promoting this feature, and then they play it and it sucks, and they go, okay, this game sucks. So they can't just sit on their laurels in the sense that, oh, we have these groundbreaking changes to the way MMOs work, and then every other feature in the game is just mediocre. It's
Hmm.
not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it
And to
if you
their
can't. Oh, sorry.
to their defense, though, they've said, we have a lot of more stuff to announce. It's going to be just as mind blowing. So
That's true.
hopefully that's completely true. I mean, it could,
It
like
could
like
just
you're
be
like you're
high.
touching on though. It's like, yeah, you have all these new systems, but are you going to let us utilize them as a player? Like, are you going to let us build the stuff, or are we going to only build on a plot this big in the game and have to save our creativity for landmark, etc.? So it's like, are they going to let us use this? Are first of all, as developers, are they going to use the powers that they have created for themselves? And secondly, are they going to let us use it? Not necessarily use it in a design standpoint, but use it as people exploring this world. Are we going to be able to take advantage of all this cool stuff that they've supposedly are designing and stuff? So it's going to be up to them, I guess, as to whether or not there's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if we mentioned this last episode or not, but it's just like with DCUO. It was a great game, but then a couple of systems didn't work. Like, you
Chat.
couldn't talk to people in your own guild because chat didn't work.
Yeah, chat didn't work
Or
at all. Like, how do you
it's
break that? It's like one of the oldest technologies on the internet.
but
Um,
that's the thing, they can have this wonderful Minecraft world, but if certain systems are broken, people are gonna just be like, this game is horrible, and
hmm
stop playing it.
right,
It doesn't matter how groundbreaking it is if it doesn't work.
right. And I guess World of Warcraft came out at the time where it didn't matter if it wasn't broken because there was just so few competition, and so people were going to play
Yeah.
it even if it was absolutely atrocious, which it was. If you guys played World of Warcraft at launch, it was the laggiest, buggiest thing that has ever come out. Not necessarily that it's on par with all the other MMOs because they're all buggy and bad. Let's be honest with ourselves. Or if they're perfect and they're really boring and bland, but after that, though, you have to uh, make your stuff work, and that's the reason why World of Warcraft is sustaining its numbers. Is because after that crap launch, everything else has been really smooth. And if they implement it, even if the systems are really bad and outdated, it doesn't matter because they work. and that's one of the reasons people stay, because they introduce a new raid. Maybe the raids are a little bit buggy, but you know what? Overall, they're better than most of the raids that come out on games that have launched, i.e., SOTOR and so forth. So like, it's just, you have to do it right. Like, and that raises the question: if you can do it right, should you just not do it? Like, if you're getting a year away from launch or 6 months away from launch, and this one system is just, it seems really good on paper, but it's just not working out. Maybe it's a design flaw, maybe it's actual bugs. Should you just get rid of it? Should Ilum just not have existed at launch at all, and then they should maybe implement it later whenever they've perfected it in closed testing? Or should they have launched it regardless because it's something that people expected?
I think they should have just left it broken, but at least people could play it.
Right. And let's be honest, with the biggest problem with Ilum is because the all it was is two teams gathering in the middle, trying to pick off kills of like the one guy in the 20 or 40 person mob that was stupid enough to come a little bit too close to you, to kill them so that you can get your daily done and get the fuck out of there, so you didn't have to be there anymore. And that's like obviously a huge design flaw that should have been like noted way before the game came out, because it was that obvious. Like, why else would I be there? There was no reason to be there other than the quests,
right,
to get the gear and stuff.
Our ultimate point with that is that, just because this game is taking a lot of innovative things that, Minecraft has implemented, they still have to get the other 99% of the game correct.
Right.
Or
no matter how many voxels you can build with and stuff, if the game is not good, then it's not good. No matter how innovative it is, that doesn't mean it's going to be good.
You're just going to end up with Spore. It's
right.
going to be Spore 2. Great character creation, but the game, it's all about gameplay.
Yeah.
Everything is about gameplay.
And I mean, I think that said, we're not bashing on the game that's not even out. To me, the way they're talking is they know all this, and they're building the best game ever. That's what they think anyway. And the way they're talking about having all this other stuff that they really want to tell you about, that they're just absolutely pumped up to tell you, but they can't yet, that just speaks to you that they're building a game that is exciting past the 4 Holy Grails. The other stuff that they're doing that isn't the Holy Grails is also just as awesome, and hopefully that's true.
Yeah, I guess I'm just hedging my bet a little bit, because
well, I mean,
I don't
we're
want to
all
say it's going to be the greatest game ever, and then it's
not mediocre.
Live
well,
up.
I mean, we're all cynics at this point, and the fact that it got me and you to do a podcast after playing all these shitty MMOs is just a testament to how excited we are, despite the reservations that we have. So hopefully they deliver, and we can stop being cynics for a little while until.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about the game. We're just like we're sitting on the side where we don't know hardly anything.
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
I hope this works.
The last 10 to 15 years, the first like 3 or 4 MMOs that came out are some of them within that time span. EverQuest 1, Ultima Online, even Shadowbane, games like that. Those were the last MMOs that innovated at all. The rest of the MMOs after that point have been the exact same game with maybe a little bit of a tweak here and there, and I think that's the point everybody's been making since the game was announced, is that this isn't like that. This is why you should love it. And the truth is, I didn't realize there were so many people brainwashed to love it. Like, I didn't realize so many people legitimately loved the MMOs the way they've been in the last 15 years. And I was under the impression that we all played World of Warcraft because it was the only option that we had, really. And if they would actually, take a leap of faith and do something new, then people would flock to it and love it and embrace it, and it would be like EverQuest would be like World of Warcraft 2 was coming out. It would be just that huge and hyped instead of just a moderately active Reddit, But apparently, people are really clutching on to the old ways, and it's going to take some playtime to truly see that, okay, I actually hate that. I like new stuff, you know?
No, people are afraid of change.
Yeah, it's become increasingly clear. Um, the one last thing we'll talk about briefly, I'm sure we've been talking for hours or something, I don't even know at this point, but the last one was a small one. It was brought up on EverQuest or EQNext's Into the Portal, which I'll link below as well if you guys want to watch it. The maps, mini maps, and navigation system, it came up, and I just had so many thoughts popping into my head whenever they were talking about it that I just wanted to cover it. And first of all, I guess the question is, first of all, should there be a mini map system? I think the obvious answer is kind of, I don't know. And secondly, should it have quest tracking built into it? What do you think?
And we're talking about Landmark or
No, no,
Next?
no. We're talking about EverQuest Next. Because I think a map system needs to be in Landmark, especially if it's
Yeah.
procedurally generated and it goes on forever, because it has to be something like that. But in EverQuest Next, say you're on a quest, should you be staring at your mini map to get to that point, or should they just remove it so you're looking at the screen? And in addition, if there should be a mini map, then should it show you where you need to go for your quests? Or, and I think a lot of people forget this, is when for the longest time after World of Warcraft, even through Wrath of the Lich King, World of Warcraft didn't have quest tracker. In fact, no games did pretty much. You had to read the text or ask in chat where to go for this particular quest, and then go there. And you can say, okay, well, with this dynamic system, with this world, there won't be a quest there in that location, but it seems to me that it would be pretty easy for them to implement a system where even though the quests are sort of changing, you could still highlight a part on the map where, maybe if you go there, there'll be some goblins to kill, that sort of cheaty kind of system. So do you think that should be in the game? If so, why? If not, why not?
All right, I had a couple of thoughts. One thought is it doesn't really matter whether we think that there should be mini maps or not, because if there aren't, then third parties are going to create them as add-ons. And I don't know how, because obviously with things being procedural, things are going to be changing in the world, but
Well,
they'll
that's the
find
thing,
a
though, is
way
like,
to data mine,
well, if you think about it, though,
information.
the reason they're able to create these maps in World of Warcraft is because all they needed is some location numbers, some X
Oh,
and Y
right.
axis numbers, and then been put in your program. If you have this quest, then this location's going to light up because we know exactly where those things are. But without access to the server by server information, because it's going to be different on every server too, they're going to have be allowed
Well,
access.
How do they do it in a game such as I'm not thinking of EVE Online, but I'm thinking of Rift. How do they do it in Rift? Do you know by any chance when Rift's open,
Well, I
how that
mean,
appears in your minimap?
it's on your map. It's a lit up area on your map. It just shows a little icon. There's a rift here, and you go to it. I mean, and to that it is dynamic to the point where, okay, it's on this part of the map, or maybe it could be over here on this map. But I don't. But that's an in-game feature, though. They have access to their servers and stuff. They know they can link up different
Well,
technologies
yeah,
and
I mean,
stuff.
I mean that's what I think they would do something like that, so that
But I don't think that.
uh,
I think that could easily be remedied if they just didn't allow third-party modders to access their server database in terms of what's happening in the world. And I
well,
don't know if it's going to be really possible, though. Is like in Rift, it's one thing. It's like a rift, you know.
mm,
And I don't even know if they're really dynamic. I don't know if they have set node points where these rifts can pop up and it just randomly picks one, or if it can
hmm
be anywhere on the map. I didn't play it long enough to be honest, but
okay, yeah,
it's still,
I
even
didn't
if it
either.
was random and it could be anywhere on that map, it's still just one thing. It's like a little icon. We're talking about a living and breathing world. How could
Well,
a third party system
in,
track NPCs of all sorts, not just little friendlies, but
well,
also the
in
enemies and
Star Wars
stuff?
Galaxies, uh, you had systems where things would move around as far as like you would mine in one area, and then that resource would deplete itself, and pop up in another area.
Hmm.
So I remember in Star Wars Galaxies they had like beacons. So like you would have like shafts of light, that you would like start walking towards, and that's how they kind of dealt with it in that game. It was beacons, and
And that sort of
so
like
that way
reminds
there you
me.
didn't have to look at your mini map. You could still like you could take that away
Yeah, that
and
sort of
like
reminds me
actually
of
walk through the world.
EverQuest, not EverQuest. Fuck. Um, Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Oblivion, even, and the new Elder Scrolls Online. They have the little strip across the top of your screen that says north. If you're going, it
Hmm.
just sort of rotates, depending on it's like a compass. It's like a linear
Hmm.
compass, and then if you look at the direction of the quest, it has a little pointy thing on it, and you're like, okay, I'll go that direction. But I don't. That fixes it where you don't have to stare at your mini map, but I don't know if it. I think there's something to be celebrated in the idea of in a sandbox, especially whenever so much is riding on you deciding where to go and like doing your own thing. Anything that tells you where to go, it sort of, to me, it sort of cancels the spirit of the whole thing out.
Hmm.
Should a player be? Because if it's there, people are going to use it. It may be optional, but if it's there, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so to me, I would rather just go and hang out. I would rather go hang out in a city and wait for somebody to be like, "Oh man, I just found out there was a group of bandits here or there," or I just would rather go out into the world and find a group of bandits by accident or whatever.
What about something like this? I don't know what your opinions on this are. This just randomly popped in my head, but if because uh what if you created tools like for example like tuning rods in order to find certain types of resources,
Hmm.
and then those specific tuning rods would point you in the direction of those resources, and maybe you would need higher level tuning rods, or they would break down and you'd have to make new ones. So that way there it's more specific to what you're looking for without being like a cure all, like it tells you where you've got 50 different points,
Right.
like a quest tracker
Right, and I
would.
think
It would
that that's
just be
sort
point you
of
toward that one thing you're kind of looking for.
in terms of crafting and mineral gathering and stuff. I think that'd be perfect. Like limited location of nodes because who knows if it's in the middle of a mountain that you have to carve your way to. I don't know if it's going to be something you have to do really, or if it's going to be on the surface of the mountain always. But if it's like Minecraft and you can dig into the soil, maybe you have to dig into the center of the mountain to get the mithril or whatever. So to that point, yeah, it should definitely have some sort of tracking system. And I think the more manual the tracking system is, like a tuning rod, the better. The more immersive it is.
Or like a soil sampler, or just something where
Yeah,
it's something you create or buy.
and it's
So it's not
local and
like
it's always
it's not a
changing.
skill,
Right.
or it's not necessarily a skill that all you do is do this quest in order to get that skill, and then you leave it on, and it's basically just like a quest tracker thing you
Right.
turn off and on. It's something like you're actually working towards, and that makes it more engaging, I think, maybe than having something so passive.
Right, but that sort of leads into, well, what about the stuff that's not crafting? What if it's a quest to kill a mob, or to save a town, or some of the typical PVE type of element quests that they're talking about happening dynamically? Should you? And we talked about this last time with the Rose song.
Which
Sh-
sounded kind of silly.
yeah, should you? Well, I mean, it depends on how they use it. It could be really
Sure.
awesome, but
Yeah, I know. I'm
um,
just being
it's just the
cynical.
idea is that should you be pointed to the goblins, or should you have to find an NPC who tells you about the goblins, or accidentally stumble upon the goblins, which is the idea of the mini map with the quest tracker. But I mean, you would have to still get the quest, or if you get close enough, something lights up red, there's some stuff going down over there. That seems lame to me. I think they should avoid any sort of mini map quest tracking system at all. I mean, if you're going to go and have a mini map, fine. Just let it be, okay, what's going on over this mountain, and maybe you can look and see a little glimmer of lava over that mountain, and there's lava there. Or something like, to that extent, as a utility, a very basic manual utility. A
You mean
mini
like
map
if
could be
if there's
cool.
like a battle going on, they shoot flares up into the air or something so you can see it from long distances?
Well, I
Oh, I
mean,
might want to
like,
go over there if I want to check something
I
out.
think a mini map in itself, without all these extra doohickeys attached to it, like quest tracking or whatever the case is, any sort of dynamic icons popping up on it to show you where battles are happening or nodes. If you take all that away and you just have a mini map, it's still a map. You know, you can still look at it and get some sort of basic navigational information from it. You know, what's up this road? I'll open my map and I'll say, okay, there's a town up this road. I'm just going to keep going up the road. Obviously, that's a good idea. That's a good map system. It's very basic, but past that, I don't think they should do anything else. I don't think they should add icons. I mean, maybe a city icon over a city because you know there's a city there. But like, I don't think they should have battles lit up with a battle icon. I don't think they should have opportunistic quests lit up with an opportunistic, quest icon. I think it should be a blank canvas of a map. Now, if they add a class like a freaking cartographer class and they have all these special abilities to help you out, you can join their group and they can say, okay, I'm going to ping this one ability while you're in my group. You're going to pay me 50 gold because that's how economy works. And I'll do this and it'll uncover everything within the area as it is right now. Doesn't refresh. That's just how it is at this moment. And it'll show you goblins, goblin camp. It'll show you a PvP battle going on, whatever. And that's this cartographer class's like best skill they have. Like they went to tier 4 or 5 to get this skill, and then that means there's limitations to it, and it's not. It's a weapon ability, so you can't just have it. You have to be a cartographer. I don't know where I'm going with this. It sounds like an awesome idea.
It sounds awesome. I mean, I think also too, don't forget, I mean, it's depth too. I mean, you could have a cartographer class or something where yeah, on the surface level, but you're going to have special things. I mean, how would they have a mini map that's 3D to show you all the different layers of the world
Right.
that's not obtrusive to you enjoying the scenery?
Right.
Which is ultimately what you want to do, because otherwise you're just
Well, I
walking
think,
around with auto run on and your mini map open.
and this has been talked about a lot, is I think one of the biggest keys is going to be putting as many mechanics that the game has into the hands of a player, like gear.
As an ability, you mean?
Yeah, something like that. Like gear. If you want gear, you go to a crafter and he'll craft you some gear. You don't go to the dungeon and camp the mob or whatever. I mean, sure, there's going to be some of that.
So taking what normally you get from quests and putting it into the hands of player
Well,
creation.
quests and then like mechanics for the UI, like the cartographer. Something you would expect from World of Warcraft or any other MMO that's come out in the last 5 or 6 years, the quest tracking and stuff like that, you need a cartographer to get. And like they're talking about today, instead of having, which they've already announced are going to be wizard spires, so you can connect your travel from one spire to the next for fast traveling, have like in EverQuest 1 where you have to talk to, or Shadowbane, where you have to talk to a healer to summon you if you want to go somewhere fast. In EverQuest, you had wizards or whatever who had teleport abilities, and even in World of Warcraft, you had the mages who could teleport you to the big cities and stuff. Taking that away from like a thing you click on in game and making it so a player has to do it. You know, in Shadowbane, if you wanted to move fast, just like in EverQuest 1, where you had to have a certain class with a buff, if you wanted to run really fast, you had to get the sprint buff or whatever from a scout. And I'm talking. I know most people talk about EverQuest 1 or Ultima Online, and I talk about Shadowbane because that is my bread and butter. But I was a scout. People wanted me in their party because I could make the party run faster. There was no mounts. So the only way to improve your movement speed was to have a scout with the scout buff, so that you could all get to the battleground really fast. And if you wanted to be summoned into the battleground, you got your healer there, your priest, so they could use their summon ability to teleport you in. And you could only do it one at a time, and you had to be a level 30 or 40 priest. And it was stuff like that. Like, those are mechanics that are just being given to you in every MMO now. If you want to go to the city, you can click on a thing and it'll take you there. You know, if you want to go fast, you buy a mount and you can do it forever, etc., etc., etc. Whereas if you say the only way you can see what's on your map at any given time is to talk to a cartographer who's the highest tier cartographer, and they can give you a brief buff on your map that tells you where everything is in that moment. It doesn't change. It just gives you like a snapshot of what's going on. And if
Sure,
you want an
right.
upgraded snapshot, you go to them again and you do it. And that gives them the opportunity to say, well, give me some money and I'll do it for you. Or, it gives people in your guild reasons to be a cartographer class, which sounds
Sure.
absolutely lame in itself. But if you give it like a purpose that's really important, then it matters.
I think uh, I think what's going to happen if they did something like that is they would have to have an NPC in some of the major cities that could also do that for you. So maybe they reveal X area of the map for you for X amount of money, for X amount of time.
Why do you think that?
And well, because what if there are no cartographers on
Well,
on
I
the
don't.
server at
That's the
that
thing, though,
point
is
or
you're shit out
something?
of luck. Like, I mean, it shouldn't
I
be a
know, but
mandatory
people.
thing.
I'm not saying that MMOs have to be Care Bear, but they do to prevent, people going on Twitter and cursing and making death threats on developers.
Yeah. Well, I think I mean, but at the same time, you got to do what people don't know what's best for them. As a rule, the human race, we don't really understand what is actually good for us. Like, we think we know, but usually we don't know until it happens. Like, somebody else imposes something on us, and then we're like, oh, well, this is better. This is actually better than I thought it would be. And so I think just like the developers are now saying, we're changing the genre altogether. We're changing the way combat works. We're changing the way the world works with destructibility and artificial intelligence. That's not the safe way to do it. People are not expecting that, so maybe they won't play it. Who knows how this is actually going to hit with the public? But they're doing it anyway because they think it's what's best for the game, and a lot of us agree, and some of us are like, I don't. I want to use aggro to systems in combat, or whatever the
Mm,
case is, whatever they're clinging to. Um, and they're doing it anyway. So I think there's a lot of room for them to continue to say, well, we don't care. I mean, a lot of it's like it's cool that they're doing the roundtable stuff, but most of that stuff is like arbitrary things, like whether a dwarf should have a beard or whether a female dwarf should have a beard. Like that doesn't
mm,
really matter. That's just really like kind of a cop out vote to have on your website if you're trying to like let your players contribute to how the game is being developed. That's a matter of
cosmetic.
actually what a dwarf has on its face. It's not like a game mechanic that's going to change the way the game
Yeah.
is being played. So if you're already setting this example for we don't care, we're making the best game that we think we can make based on nothing that's been done before, what we think could be awesome. Because really, if you think about it, they're doing stuff that hasn't been done before in any genre, not just like MMO genre. So this is a big deal, and if they're going to make the game that they're trying to make, they're going to have to ignore like half, if not like 90% of what people are saying and giving them in terms of like feedback, because people are just in this rut. So I think to an extent they can be like, well, it doesn't matter if you expect to have every little bit of piece of information that you could possibly have on your mini map. We're just going to give you a map or nothing at all, and then to get the map, you have to go buy it from a cartographer who made the map or something like that, because I think you have to at some point take the reins away from the player, because the player has I mean, we can blame it a lot on the developers, but the player has basically given us the last 15 years of boring ass MMOs because they settle for it, because they think it's good, you know? So why not let the developers who have already said they want to make a game that's different, make the game that's different and see how it goes? And I think that having a really restrictive and really very basic utilitarian map is a good place to start. Boom. Brian out. Drop mic.
Like I said before, it all just depends on how it works,
But
how it actually
I mean,
works.
and to an extent, I'm being a little bit, what's the word, hypocritical, because earlier we're talking about having the arena PvP in there.
Instances, yeah.
So it's like, why not just drop that too? You know?
Like I said, if the open world MOBA PvP works, then
Well,
it works,
well,
and
that's the
we can
thing, though.
just
Is
shut
like
up and we don't we can just enjoy it. But
if
we haven't seen it, so how can we know?
Well,
I mean, everything we're saying, is cool or not cool is based off of what we've played before. And,
mhm.
they make it based off of WoW because WoW has,
It
X amount of
works
player
within,
base.
yeah.
It's, it,
Well, I
innovation,
think a lot of
and
it sort of all comes down to how good it actually, like how good those four holy grails actually are. Like it all seems really groundbreaking on paper, but how good is the artificial intelligence going to be? Is it going to
Mhm.
be better than WoW, which isn't saying much, or is it going to be groundbreakingly good? Because that sort of tells me whether or not, the world is going to be smart enough and dynamic enough to support players going out and doing whatever the hell they want and being entertained, as opposed to going out in the world and not being entertained and wishing there was an instance PvP that they could join to fucking do something entertaining for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? If the world's like actually living and breathing with the smartest NPCs to ever grace a video game, and there's always something to do because the world is just that well crafted by these systems, then perfect. Don't give them any instance PvP. Don't give them a map at all. Who cares? Just let them play in the world and
Yeah.
they'll be immediately engrossed and entertained. But if it's not that good,
Right.
if it's just a little bit better than average, then you're going to have to rely on all these boring systems like instance PvP as opposed to great open world dynamic PvP to entertain your audience anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, with Guild Wars 2, it's like just if you can drop me into a game and have a craft have like the cooking crafting system like just be, was so entertaining to me. Like I didn't need to do quests.
Right.
I didn't need to look at my map. I just needed to find, plants to chop up so I
Hmm.
could explore, make experiment and make new stuff that gave people magic finds, like that was so much fun to me. I felt like I was doing something that actually helped my guild members. And at the same time, I didn't feel like I was missing out because I was doing something vital. Um, and oh God, that was so much fun.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
could
know
do
why I
whatever
had that
you
much
wanted.
fun doing that.
Like you
If
can
they
do
made
whatever you
every
wanted to.
system just like that, you don't need quests because you've got a game that just lives, itself.
No matter
You
what they
know,
decide to do that day, it's like it doesn't matter because it's fun, first of all. But also, if they had, like, for
yeah,
instance, in Guild Wars 2, if you had been able to cook and level up, not just level up your cooking skill, but like they're talking about,
yeah.
leveling up crafting is your level. I mean, there's not levels, there's tiers, but being a tier 4 or 5 crafter is just as important as being a tier 4 or 5 warrior. Or in that game's case, if they had let you get regular level experience from cooking, you would have been absolutely addicted to that shit because it would have still been able
I would
to,
still be playing it.
yeah, you would still be able to get to level cap, the end goal of every MMO, with cooking instead of having
Yeah.
to go out and do things that you.
Why don't RPGs let you do that? I don't understand. It was like I was playing when I played Oblivion for the first time. I made conversations one of my main one of my main skills.
Right.
So I was leveling by doing conversations, and I thought, what a missed opportunity! They didn't make it possible to beat Oblivion, the game,
Through
just by
conversation.
conversations. Like, what if I'm talking to the final boss in the game or some giant creature and because of my conversation skill, I like make them go kill themselves, or I convince them that they don't want to fight me, they want to come join my side, or I convince them not to be evil anymore.
Right.
That is a dynamic game that says whatever you do really matters because we've given you a pathway to not really beat the game, but to do end game content with whatever skill you choose.
Right.
That's a dynamic game. That's a
Right.
game I want to play.
Well, now that's not to say you can raid with the adventurer class, but
Sure,
it
but
is to say that maybe you can gear up your guild for raiding with your adventurer class or something like that,
right.
and you're still a tier 5, even
Or
if you're a
as
tier
a
5 map maker or whatever.
in SOTOR, they made it so that certain crafting skills allowed you to take different paths in the raids, and they only did that in like two different what did they call them? Not raids.
Flashpoints.
Flashpoints. They only did it in a couple of flashpoints, but that was like a feature that would have, if they had utilized that more, would have been really cool.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
I think
and
the whole fall of Star Wars: Old Republic was they had all these little things that you could do, like the conversation points in flashpoints where you got to talk, and then the person who rolled the best would get to say what they wanted to say. But if they had just taken that a step or five further and made it so that it was absolutely completely different, or you could completely screw your party over, or you could help them out, or it would just be a completely different boss that you fought, or something really, really intense like that, by choosing this and then winning your role, it absolutely changed whatever was happening. Or if by having, this crafting skill, you're able to not just, well, I don't know, what was the stuff, fight a little mini boss or have additional treasure or something like that.
or even just save time for speed runs.
Yeah, like that sort of thing is kind of lame. Like it starts, it could be cool. It was probably cool the first time we did it, but after that, it's just like, well, that doesn't really matter. But what if you unlock a
Yeah.
door, and then the end boss is a completely different boss, or something really dramatic like that? Like you don't even fight the one boss that you're gonna fight; you fight a different boss. Or
And that's what Sandbox lets you do. That if they don't focus so much on the story. I mean, they create a world with a bunch of lore in it, but they don't necessarily focus on a linear story. That's
right,
when possibilities just open up. Like someone who just really can't spend time exploring the world, but loves being in a city and cooking, can
right,
enjoy the game and be just as vital in the grand scheme of things.
right.
That's a game that lets people drop in and out, and gives them the opportunity to be vital to the community. That's a game
Hmm.
that's going to be successful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just like me and you have been talking about our landmark and how we're gonna be like, I'll do the building, and you'll go out and gather resources all the time.
Yeah.
That's like a symbiotic relationship that should be absolutely beneficial for both people.
Right, and we
Like the
didn't
person out there
necessarily have to be
gathering.
different classes. We're using the systems they implemented, but just we're creating our own like game within the game.
Right, and that's just like a microcosm of the point. Like you, as the person gathering iron for our anvil or whatever we're building at the time, and me actually taking the time to build the wall or whatever. So you're out gathering stone for the wall. I'm building the wall. But at the end of the day, if I was just building a wall, I would run out of stone. And if you were just gathering stone, you wouldn't have a wall. You just have a bunch of fucking stone. So it's like we're both
Yeah.
equally important to the process. Naturally, one of us could do both, but it would take more time. Or, I mean, if we're playing an actual EverQuest Next where a different class is a different thing, I mean, to me, having an adventure class is a good step. But what if they? It would be cooler if you. I mean, not for landmark. No, God, no,
Mhm.
not for landmark. In EverQuest Next, it would be cooler if you had a builder class and then you had a gatherer class or a miner class, and instead of it just being a skill like a mining skill, you had an entire class that mined or gathered, even broader, so you can cut down trees or whatever. And then you had a
Mhm.
guy that was really good at building, so that maybe they could build faster than normal people, or being a builder was really beneficial to build stuff, and that would be cool to me in the actual next game. Now in Landmark, God knows, just let one class do all the stuff.
Right.
That's the point though. Is like you should feel important, or like you're playing a role in the grand scheme of things, an important role. If you just want to craft, or if you just want to gather, or if you just want to make maps, or whatever the case is.
Yeah. They really have an opportunity here, and I'm really excited to see, the next features that they reveal. I think
Right.
that's kind of like the bottom line is we really want to see where this goes next, and
And hopefully the next
um,
convention, which I think is PAX, it'll give us a little bit more than Gamescom did, because I think they sort of avoided giving a lot of brand new information at Gamescom because it's more of a fan-driven experience, and that sounds like the perfect place. But those fans don't have websites to post on stuff. You're looking for
mm,
if you wanna go to like E3, that's where you announce it, because then you have journalists who are going to tell people what you said, etc. So hopefully the next like let smaller but more focused convention like PAX and stuff, we'll get a lot more information. I mean, we are getting extremely close to the winter, of 2013, which is whenever Landmark is supposed to come out. So it's surprising to me that we don't know absolutely everything about Landmark right now, you know, because we're so close. But that just tells me that there's got to be a lot more information coming pretty soon. So hopefully we'll have a lot more to talk about in the coming months up into the release of Landmark, avoiding what would be a travesty in a delay of Landmark. I would actually literally shit my pants. I would just absolutely lose control of my bowels, and I would crap into my pants. And
you should do that off webcam.
I would do it on webcam, just so the public would know how outraged I was. I wouldn't even do it on a podcast. It would be like a dedicated video, like 30 minutes long, of me just explaining what was happening.
Why is it taking you 30 minutes?
No, I would go into detail about how it felt, what it smells like, etc. Now, and it would be like a standalone video. And on that note,
the sad part is I would watch it.
That's not sad. I think everybody would watch it because we all felt the same, but nobody really wanted to shit their pants because it would ruin the pants. But
you just had the
I was the martyr for everybody involved.
Right.
But on that note of shitting pants, I think it's a suitable place to stop the podcast because we've covered our 4 topics, and it's probably the longest video ever recorded.
I had a lot of fun, I gotta say.
Yeah, this was a lot better than the first one, I think. Yeah. I think this is a better setup than our previous setup, which sort of set the tone for just being serious with the news and stuff. But this gave us a lot more time to talk about it, and I think this is probably like 2 hours long or something. But I'll edit it down a little bit maybe, or make it into 2 different parts. So we'll get one at the first of the week and one at the end of the week, and then we'll lead into episode 3 or whatever. So if you guys have any suggestions on how to make the show better, please leave a comment. And please follow us on Twitter. We post a lot of stuff on Twitter about what's going on in EverQuest community, any news, and so forth. You can follow us at Questline EQ. And obviously our website is followthequestline.wordpress.com. And you got anything to say, Uber?
You can follow me on Twitter at acorpet, and I talk about movies and EverQuest and just everything, and yeah, just feel free to drop me. Oh, yeah.
Speaking of awesome stuff, I forgot to say that the webcomic is up.
Oh, yes. I meant to say that when you were talking about Landmark.
Right.
You did a good job on that, buddy.
Yeah, it's up. Our webcomic first issue is finally up. I don't know how often I'll be able to post them because that one took quite a while to do, but hopefully at the very least monthly, but I would like to do it weekly, I guess, or bi-weekly. You can check it out on the followthequestline.wordpress.com and also on our Tumblr at its Tumblr, sequesteredcomic.tumblr.com. And check it out and tell us what you think, because it took me a long time to do, and I like
it.
To be praised for my work, etc. I know a lot of people on Reddit were like, I don't get it, but I think it was pretty.
Really?
I think it was pretty obvious.
I think it made sense.
I thought it made perfect sense, and somebody actually explained the punchline, but it wasn't. It wasn't the punchline.
Was it the right punchline?
It wasn't even what I was going for at all. I was like, no, sorry guys, it's actually about this.
As you continue, people will start to see where you're going with it.
Well, I think the last panel really drove it home, what was happening, but I guess some people just missed little nuances. So in the future, I'll think about that a little bit more whenever I'm writing the jokes and things like that. If you guys have a joke, please feel free to also post that. Maybe I'll comicize it, etc. But that's all
about
we got.
Me, though.
Nobody knows who you are, so they wouldn't get it. I'm just kidding. We're both going to be famous. Okay, and on that note, thanks for watching another episode of Questline. And until next time, on behalf of Austin Uber Corpet, I'm Brian Chapman, and this has been another successful episode. So until next time, follow the Questline.